The building is on fire. Metaphorically. Someone's screaming into a phone. The deadline moved up 6 hours. The client is threatening to walk. And everyone else in the room is either frozen or spiraling. And there you are. Calm hands, clear voice, already 3 steps ahead. You're handling it, and you feel good. Better than you felt in days. That's the thing I want to talk to you about. Because what looks like a personality trait is actually a nervous system that got calibrated a very specific way at a very specific age during a very specific stretch of American history. I'm Frank, and by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why calm feels wrong to you and why chaos feels like coming home. Start with what you do, because the behavior is the fingerprint. You're the person people call when things go sideways. Family emergency, work meltdown, someone's kid is in the hospital, your phone rings. And you show up sharp, focused, weirdly resourceful. You make the calls, you find the number, you talk to the doctor, you handle the insurance company like you've been training for this your whole life. Which, in a way, you have. But watch what happens the next weekend when there's nothing on the calendar. The house is quiet, everyone's fine, nothing is on fire, and you're standing in the kitchen with a cup of coffee feeling something that runs closer to dread than to peace. A low hum under the skin that says something's wrong. You check your phone. You reorganize a drawer. You pick a small fight about nothing. You start a project you didn't need to start. Because the quiet feels like the moment before the shoe drops, and your body would rather drop the shoe itself than wait for it. That's a stress response system that was trained to expect incoming, and now it doesn't know what to do when nothing's coming in. Here's where the neuroscience gets interesting. There's a researcher named Stephen Porges who spent decades on something called polyvagal theory. Clinicians drawing on his work describe what happens to autonomic systems that grew up under chronic unpredictability. In a regulated system, you have flexible access to what he calls the ventral vagal state, the calm, connected, social baseline. You can drop into it, you can leave it, you can come back. In a dysregulated system, you lose that flexible access. You end up oscillating between 2 other states: sympathetic mobilization, which is fight or flight, productive urgency, get it done energy, and dorsal vagal shutdown, which is the flat, dead inside, staring at the wall state. Sound familiar? You're either on fire with productivity or you're a corpse on the couch. There isn't much in between. Some clinicians are calling this functional freeze. On the outside, it looks like a person who's crushing it in a crisis and then goes home and can't answer a text for 4 days. On the inside, it's a system that never learned the middle setting. And the reason it never learned the middle setting has a lot to do with what was happening in American homes between roughly 1975 and 1990. The dual income household became the norm. The divorce rate spiked. And by some estimates, around 40% of Gen X kids came home from school to a house with nobody in it. In the early 1980s, roughly 3 million American kids between 6 and 13 were regularly unsupervised after school, with the typical unsupervised window running 2 to 3 hours a day. Law enforcement has a name for those hours: 3 to 6 p.m., the danger zone. That's when a lot of property crime and juvenile incidents cluster. That's when kids get hurt. And that's the exact window when many of you were home alone, doing homework, watching TV, or figuring out dinner, with your ears half tuned to every sound in the house. Now, I'm not going to do the tired version of this. I'm skipping the house keys and the empty kitchens. I want to talk about what that specific developmental window did to your brain, because that's the part that gets skipped. There's a concept in developmental neuroscience called the sensitive calibration window. Early childhood is when your stress response system decides what normal looks like. It's taking readings. It's asking, how much cortisol should be flowing at any given moment? How much adrenaline is baseline? What level of vigilance is required to stay safe here? Whatever answer the environment gives, that becomes the setting. And here's the kicker. That setting is sticky. It doesn't easily reset later. There's a line of research summarized by the Association for Psychological Science that looked at adults around age 37, comparing their cortisol patterns to their childhood stress levels and their current stress levels. The people who had high stress in early childhood and high stress now showed flatter cortisol curves across the day. Flatter is bad. A healthy cortisol pattern spikes in the morning and tapers by night. A flat pattern means your system has stopped responding appropriately. It's stuck. And the researchers found early childhood was the calibration window that mattered most. Whatever your nervous system learned by age 5 or 6 about how the world works, it kept using that template 3 decades later. There's another study sitting on the NIH's archive that looked at otherwise healthy adults with only low to moderate childhood adversity. Nothing extreme, no dramatic story, just the ambient background stress of a chaotic or unpredictable home. Even that group showed blunted diurnal cortisol activity as adults. Translation? You can look completely fine on the outside. Solid career, functional relationships, no obvious trauma story. And your stress response system is still running on a different operating system than everyone around you. Your body is not lying about what it went through. It just doesn't have anywhere to file the receipts. So back to that Saturday morning in the quiet kitchen. Your cortisol pattern is flat. Your adrenaline set point is elevated. Your salience network, the part of the brain that decides what's important and dangerous, is running hot from decades of overuse. Neuroscience reviews on hypervigilance describe how chronic activation of that network can crowd out the 2 networks you'd want online during calm. The default mode network, which handles rest, reflection, and creativity, and the frontoparietal network, which handles focused problem solving. When the alarm circuit is stuck in the on position, those other 2 can't get the microphone. You literally cannot access the calm brain settings because the alarm system has jammed the frequency. So calm doesn't feel like calm. Calm feels like a malfunction. Now let's talk about the part that sounds almost impossible until you see the data. Why does chaos feel good to you? Not merely familiar, actually rewarding. There's a study out of McGill from 2004 using PET imaging that pointed at an answer. Researchers put subjects under psychological stress and watched what happened in their brains. Stress was associated with dopamine release in the ventral striatum, which is the brain's reward center, the same region that lights up for food, sex, and cocaine. And the size of the dopamine release correlated with the size of the cortisol response. The more stress they got, the bigger the hit of reward chemistry. Read that back. Stress produces reward. For a system that grew up marinating in stress, that circuit is deep, well-worn, and extremely reliable. When the fire alarm goes off, you get functional, and you also get a neurochemical bonus, a little reward for handling it. Your brain has learned that crisis equals the good stuff, which means calm, by process of elimination, equals withdrawal. You are not addicted to drama. You are running a reward system that was wired around unpredictable stress, and now it hunts for that specific input the way any addicted system hunts for its substance. That's why you keep creating unnecessary conflicts. That's why you volunteer for the impossible project. That's why your relationships work better during hard times and stall out during easy ones. Your brain is looking for the fix. There's a therapist named Annie Wright who writes about this framing, and she says something that hit me sideways. She points out that for a lot of people who grew up in unpredictable homes, stillness was the thing that preceded danger. Think about that for a second. In a truly chaotic environment, the loud stuff can be less frightening than the quiet. The quiet before the door slams. The quiet before the phone call. The quiet that means someone is drinking alone in the next room, or that a decision is being made about your life that you have no say in. If your childhood taught you that stillness was the countdown to something bad, of course your adult body treats silence like a threat. You learned that calm was a trap. And that's the piece that ties the whole thing together. Because the ACE research, the Adverse Childhood Experiences study that started in the late 90s and has been running ever since, has documented that childhood stress is linked to measurable, lasting changes in neurodevelopment, endocrine function, and immune response. It shifts reward centers. It reshapes attention. It alters mood regulation. Not metaphorically, structurally. And the study wasn't only looking at extreme cases. It included what researchers called ordinary household dysfunction, divorce, parental substance use, emotional unavailability. The kind of stuff a huge slice of Gen X would look at and shrug and say, yeah, that was just Tuesday. You didn't need something dramatic to happen. You just needed enough unpredictability for enough hours a week during the years your nervous system was still deciding what to expect from the world. And the American 1980s served that up on a silver tray for a lot of you. Let me give you a specific version of this that you might recognize. It's a weeknight. You're 11. You get home at 3:30. You have until roughly 6 or 7 when the adults come back. And in that window, a lot of things could happen. The phone could ring, and it's a wrong number, or the school, or a relative asking a weird question. Someone could knock at the door. A pot on the stove could catch. A sibling could get hurt. Weather could roll in. A stranger could park across the street for too long. Any of that could happen, and any of that would require you to sort it out with no adult in the building. So what does your brain do to prepare? It stays scanning. It notices the mail truck. It clocks the neighbor's dog. It tracks the sound of every car on the block. It builds a mental map of every exit and every hiding spot in the house. It becomes very, very good at monitoring. You did that from 3:30 to 6 every day for years. Then you did it in your friend's house, and at the bus stop, and at the mall, and at your first job. Your salience network got the reps of a professional athlete. And when you turned 30 and 40 and 50, nobody gave you a certificate that said, "Congratulations, you can stop scanning now." The scanning kept running. It's still running as you watch this. You already noticed something in your peripheral vision twice while I've been talking. Call it a trained skill your environment demanded and your brain delivered. Here's why I think this is worth understanding instead of pathologizing. Because there's a real cost to it, and there's a real gift. The cost is the flat cortisol, the missing middle setting, the way calm feels like a low-grade emergency, and rest feels like something you're failing at. The gift is that you are, genuinely, extraordinary in a crisis. You have a set of skills: rapid assessment, threat prioritization, emotional regulation under pressure, resourcefulness with no instructions, that most people never develop because they never had to. You can walk into a room where 3 things are wrong, and you can triage them in 90 seconds. That's a big deal. That's the reason people call you first. That's the reason you get promoted into jobs that would break other people. That's the reason your friends survive their divorces and their parents' deaths and their kids' emergencies with you on the other end of the phone. The problem is the skill runs whether it's needed or not. It runs on Saturday mornings. It runs on vacations. It runs during the good parts of your life, and it tries to convince you the good parts aren't real yet because the alarm hasn't gone off. Your system does not know the war is over. Nobody sent it the memo. There's a piece of this that's actually fixable, and I want to be honest about which part. The wiring is real. The calibration window closed a long time ago. You are not going to get a fresh nervous system through positive thinking. But the ventral vagal state that Porges talks about, the calm, connected middle setting, doesn't have to be built from scratch. It has to be practiced back into range, slowly, in small doses. The reason a lot of Gen X responds well to things like weightlifting, cold water, long walks, and hands-on hobbies has nothing to do with those things being trendy. Those activities give the sympathetic nervous system something to do, in a controlled way, that ends. Effort, then rest. Effort, then rest. That rhythm is what a healthy stress response system looks like from the outside. And you can teach your body to remember it. The thing you cannot do, the thing that will not work and has never worked, is white-knuckle your way into calm. You cannot force stillness onto a system that reads stillness as danger. It will spit it back out every time. That's why meditation apps sit unopened on your phone. That's why the beach vacation made you anxious. That's why you needed a glass of wine to sit through a movie. The direct approach to calm doesn't work for a nervous system like yours. The indirect approach, the one that goes through effort first and lets calm arrive as the aftermath, is the one that lands. One more thing before I let you go, because I think it's the part that changes how you see yourself. The people who raised you weren't villains. Most of them were doing the best they could with the economy they inherited and the marriages they signed up for and the mental health resources of an era that thought therapy was for crazy people. Your nervous system got calibrated by their circumstances, not by their intent. And in a strange way, that same nervous system is the reason you're not falling apart now, in a decade that keeps producing new emergencies for everyone. You were trained for this. Other people are learning it on the fly. You were doing threat assessment at 11. This is your Super Bowl. The trick is remembering, on the quiet Saturdays, that the game isn't always on, that the silence is just silence, that your body is telling you something's wrong when nothing is wrong, and you are allowed to not believe it. You can let the alarm ring and not answer it. You can sit in the kitchen with the coffee and let the dread pass through without picking a fight to burn it off. Not every time. You won't win every time, but some of the time. And each time you do, you're teaching a very old system a very new lesson. That calm is just calm. And you finally, at this age, get to have some. Hang on. Before you click away, I want to leave you with one more piece, because I've watched people take the version I just gave you and run with it in the wrong direction. They hear, your nervous system is miscalibrated, and they turn it into a new project, a new thing to fix, a new crisis to solve, which is, if you're paying attention, the exact same pattern in a different costume. You cannot productivity your way out of a productivity addiction. You cannot crisis manage your relationship to crisis. The system will happily eat its own tail and call it progress. So here's the reframe I want you sitting with. You do not have to fix yourself. You are precisely calibrated equipment that was calibrated for a different environment than the one you're currently standing in. That's a very different problem, and it comes with a very different answer. You don't need repair, you need re-entry. Small, boring, unglamorous re-entry into a version of daily life where the stakes are lower than your body keeps insisting they are. That looks like finishing a meal without checking your phone. It looks like a walk where you don't listen to anything. It looks like sitting through the credits of a movie instead of jumping up the second it ends. It looks like letting a Sunday afternoon be a Sunday afternoon and not a runway to Monday. 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there. You are not trying to become a calm person. You are trying to prove to a very old, very loyal, very tired alarm system that it is finally, after all these years, allowed to stand down for a little while. It will not believe you at first. That's fine. Keep telling it anyway. That's the whole thing. The video on the screen right there, that's your next one. Go on.